A seashell, sitting on the sea floor off the coast of Cuba, rigged to explode when a particular diver swam down to pick it up. A diving suit, dusted on the inside with a fungus that would give its wearer a chronic skin disease. A box of cigars, laced with botulinum toxin, a powder that would make a man's beard fall out to humiliate him in front of his people. These sound like rejected plots from a bad spy film. They are not. They are real proposals considered by the United States government to kill or discredit Fidel Castro, and we know about them in precise detail because the United States Senate wrote them down in an official report in 1975. That report is the spine of this story, and it is worth saying its name because it is the difference between rumor and record. It is called Alleged Assassination Plots Involving Foreign Leaders, the interim report of the Church Committee. And its central finding about Cuba is stark and specific. The committee found, in its own words, concrete evidence of at least 8 plots involving the CIA to assassinate Fidel Castro between 1960 and 1965. Not one scheme, at least 8. This is not a conspiracy theory about what the government might have done. It is the government's own legislature, after a long investigation, confirming what it did. To understand how the United States ended up gluing explosives to seashells, you have to go back to a humiliation. In April of 1961, the CIA's attempt to overthrow Castro with an exile army at the Bay of Pigs had collapsed on the beach. It was a disaster, and it left the Kennedy administration furious and embarrassed. Rather than letting Castro go, the White House doubled down. In November of 1961, President Kennedy authorized a new, intensified secret campaign against Cuba. It was called Operation Mongoose. This was not a small effort. Mongoose was overseen by the president's own brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who pushed it relentlessly. The man brought in to run it was a famous CIA operative named Edward Lansdale, who had made his name fighting communist insurgencies in Asia. The operation pulled in pieces of the entire government, and it generated dozens of plans, around 33 of them, aimed at wrecking Cuba from the inside. Sabotage of the sugar harvest that the Cuban economy depended on, mining of harbors, propaganda campaigns. The goal was to make the country ungovernable and to break Castro's grip. And running alongside this campaign of sabotage was the darker track, the one the Church Committee documented in such uncomfortable detail, the effort to simply kill Castro. This is where the schemes get strange, and it is important to be precise about them because the strangeness is exactly what the record confirms. The committee described plans to poison Castro's cigars with a toxin so potent that merely putting the cigar in his mouth would do the job. It described the exploding seashell, meant to exploit the fact that Castro was an avid scuba diver. It described a diving suit prepared so that the breathing apparatus was contaminated and the suit itself was dusted with a disease-causing fungus. There were schemes that were not even meant to kill him, only to ruin him, like the plan to slip thallium salts into his shoes so that his famous beard would fall out and he would look ridiculous. Several of these were abandoned not because anyone objected on principle, but for practical reasons. The seashell plan, for instance, ran into the problem that no one could be sure which shell Castro would actually pick up. But the most serious and the most revealing piece of all this was not the gadgetry. It was who the CIA decided to partner with. To carry out the killing, the agency reached outside the government entirely and into organized crime. Senior CIA officials made contact, through a cutout, with figures from the American Mafia, men like Johnny Rosselli, Sam Giancana, and Santos Trafficante. The mob had its own reasons to want Castro dead. He had shut down their lucrative casinos and criminal operations in Havana when he took power. The CIA offered money, and the gangsters offered something the agency wanted even more than their contacts inside Cuba. They offered deniability. If a mafia hit on Castro went wrong, it would look like the mob settling a score, not the United States government committing murder. The CIA actually produced poison capsules, 5 or 6 of them, and passed them to contacts who were supposed to get them to someone close to Castro. The capsules made it into Cuba. The order to use them was never given, and the early plan fell apart after the Bay of Pigs, reportedly because Castro stopped going to the restaurant where the poison was meant to be slipped into his food. Now we arrive at the part of this story that actually matters most, the part the absurd details tend to distract from. The Church Committee could confirm the plots. It could name the schemes, the poisons, the gangsters, the dates. What it could not do, after all its investigation, was establish who at the very top had authorized the killing. And that was not an accident. It was the design. The entire architecture of these operations was built around a principle the intelligence world calls plausible deniability. The idea is to structure a secret action so that the people at the top, the president, the attorney general, can never be directly tied to the worst of it. Orders are softened into hints. Hints are passed down through layers of people, each of whom can later say they were only following a general sense of what was wanted. By the time the actual deed reaches the bottom of the chain, where a CIA officer is handing poison capsules to a mobster, there is no clean paper trail leading back up to a signature in the Oval Office. The Mafia was one layer of deniability. The vague language was another. The whole system was engineered so that, if it was ever exposed, no one powerful would have to own it. And it worked, in a sense, even against the Senate investigation. The committee found strong evidence that President Kennedy opposed assassination as a matter of policy. It found that Robert Kennedy had driven the broader campaign against Castro with enormous intensity. But on the specific question of whether a president personally ordered Castro's death, the deniability held. The committee could not say for certain. The system had done its job. It had confirmed at least 8 murder plots, and it had successfully hidden the one fact that mattered most, the chain of command. The cartoonish schemes are the part that survives in the documents. The accountability is the part that was engineered to disappear. That is the real lesson of Operation Mongoose, and it is easy to miss it while you are laughing at the exploding seashell. The seashell is real. The poison cigars are real. The deal with the mob is real. All of it confirmed by the United States Senate. What is missing, deliberately, is the answer to the simplest question a citizen might ask. Who decided this? The plots were documented. The decision was not. And a government had built its secret machinery precisely so that it would not be. The campaign against Castro wound down in 1964, after a change of presidents, with the goal of eliminating him quietly set aside. The story did not stay buried, though, and when the Church Committee dragged it into the light a decade later, the public reaction was strong enough that the government felt it had to respond. In 1976, President Ford issued an executive order that, for the first time, explicitly banned the United States from carrying out the assassination of foreign leaders. It took the exposure of the exploding seashells to put that line in writing. So the next time you hear about the CIA's ridiculous plots to kill Castro, remember that the ridiculous part is the part we can prove. It is sitting in a Senate report you can read tonight. The serious part, the question of who gave the orders, is the part the documents were built to keep from you. Read it yourself in the links below. The next file is already on the table.